When most people think about ancient Greece, you get these glowing images that immediately surface. You know, the philosophers, the gleaming marble.
And democracy.
And of course, democracy.
Hmm.
That radical experiment in Athens that gave us the idea that power belongs to the demos, to the people. It's a very compelling story.
It is, but it's really a historically incomplete one. Our sources, especially when you dig into the political structures outside of Athens, they show something else.
A different reality.
A starkly different one. For every city-state that was testing out true citizen rule, there were, well, many others, where wealth, not votes, was the primary instrument of governance. It was a much darker political reality in a lot of places.
Absolutely, and that's what this deep dive is all about. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding the oligarchs of ancient Greece. We're not just talking about rich people here. We are trying to uncover the systematic secrets of how that wealth was explicitly converted into political and legal power.
Yes, the mechanics of it.
Exactly. Our mission is to really dissect the mechanics of the rule of the few.
So, to start, let's just lock down the concept. Oligarchy. It's a term we use pretty loosely today.
Right.
But if you translate it from the Greek, it literally means rule of the few. It's a system where power is structurally concentrated in a tiny, select group. And crucially, this group is defined not just by who their parents were, but by their wealth and influence.
An entrenched, rich elite who get to make all the key decisions.
Precisely.
And that's the critical contrast with democracy, isn't it? Democracy, at least in theory, tries to spread power out among the citizens.
Whereas oligarchy, by its very nature, uses legal and economic tools to make sure that only a specific, let's say, tax bracket or class has any real control. It's much less about civic participation.
And more about accumulated capital deciding the fate of the whole city.
Exactly. And what really stands out in the sources is just how diverse this rule of the few could be. I mean, oligarchy wasn't this single monolithic system. It adapted.
It adapted based on what was making people rich in that specific place. Okay, so let's unpack that. I think the best way is to look at two big case studies where this was firmly established, Sparta and Corinth. They offer this fascinating, almost textbook contrast in how economic foundations can shape a political structure.
A perfect contrast. So let's start with the one most people associate with stability, Sparta. When you really analyze Sparta's structure, you realize it's a deeply, deeply conservative oligarchy.
Right.
Power was concentrated in a very small group of military and landed aristocrats, the homoioi or the equals.
And the source of their power was literally the earth under their feet, wasn't it?
Precisely. Their entire system was built around land ownership. Every Spartan citizen was, in theory, granted a kleros.
An allotment of land.
An allotment of land, and it was worked by the enslaved Helot population. This land wealth was what let them dedicate their entire lives to military training. If you lost your
everything.
You lost your citizenship, your political rights, it was all gone. So military fitness and political power were just inextricably tied to owning land and, well, owning people.
So their oligarchy wasn't really controlled by, say, an assembly of voters, but by these institutions that were designed to protect that land-based militaristic status quo.
Absolutely. The actual instruments of control were the Gerousia, this council of 30 elders, usually elected for life, and the Ephoret, which was 5 annually elected overseers.
But even with elections, it wasn't exactly open to everyone.
No, not at all. The candidates for the Gerousia had to be wealthy, high-status men over 60. It was a self-perpetuating system where military skill and inherited land secured your spot among the ruling few.
Okay, so if land-based power looks like Sparta, what happens when the economic engine of a city is, mobile? Let's switch gears completely to Corinth, one of the wealthiest trading cities in the entire Greek world.
Corinth is the perfect maritime mirror image. The oligarchy here was commercial, not solely military. The ruling class was made up of these immensely wealthy merchants, ship owners, and financiers.
So they controlled the trade routes.
They controlled the crucial trade loops between the Aegean and Adriatic seas. Their power wasn't based on how many fields they owned,
but on how many ships they had sailing the Mediterranean.
That's the key difference. Control over maritime trade and all the financial levers that go with it, loans, insurance, the price of grain, that was their political capital.
So they could dictate policy just by controlling the economy.
Right. If they decided to levy a high tax on certain imports, they enriched themselves and funded projects that just reinforced their own control. The sources show us both cities achieved the rule of the few, but they did it using completely opposite economic philosophies. One was rooted and immovable, the other was fluid and commercial.
That contrast brings us to the core of this, the engine of influence. How did the elite actually take that accumulated wealth, whether it was from land or trade or military spoils, and convert it so explicitly into political control?
Well, the sources are unanimous on this. This conversion wasn't accidental, it was institutionalized. Oligarchy emerged because that accumulated wealth wasn't just seen as personal property. It was seen as the key instrument of influence. It meant they could operate outside of normal civic processes.
It sounds less like a political system and more like a sophisticated private investment strategy where the political outcome is the dividend.
That's an excellent way to put it. Let's look at the 3 specific mechanisms they used to ensure that financial power translated directly into controlling resources and laws. The first one, and this ties back to Sparta, was financing military campaigns.
Okay, so break that down for us. How does funding a fleet or paying for soldiers actually turn into real political control?
It's transactional control. When the police faced a military threat or needed resources to expand, the wealthy elite would step in. I mean, sometimes they were the only ones who could bear the cost.
So they're providing security.
They're providing the most critical service. And by doing that, they earned not just gratitude, but also leverage. They could demand concessions, like the right to hold key offices, control over the treasury, or even immunity from certain taxes. They'd argue their contribution was vital to the city's security.
They effectively bought political impunity.
Yes, and that's how they gained influence through security. The second major mechanism, public works, is how they secured goodwill and permanence.
Right, building thing.
Exactly. Constructing public buildings, sponsoring festivals, performing costly civic duties, what the Greeks called liturgies. It was all political theater.
They weren't just being generous.
Not at all. They were creating physical monuments to their own indispensability. When a wealthy merchant paid for a massive new temple or improved the harbor, everyone in the city knew who provided that resource.
That changes the whole relationship between the citizen and the state, doesn't it? Instead of relying on collective taxes, the citizens start relying on the benevolence of the few.
It creates a debt of gratitude that translates directly into political weight. They become these indispensable patrons. So when the assembly debates a law that might threaten the elite's commercial interest, the memory of that spectacular public spending, it acts as a powerful deterrent.
And if that doesn't work, there's the third and most direct mechanism, simply controlling the laws themselves.
And that's the end game. By controlling key institutions like certain councils or offices, which they could do because holding office often required immense personal wealth, they could directly influence or even draft the legislation.
So they write the rules.
They write the rules. They made sure laws about debt, land, trade monopolies, and taxes were written to specifically protect and institutionalize their own power. They cemented their position legally, all under the guise of an established constitutional order.
That whole process, though, the open conversion of money into legal control, it sounds inherently volatile, especially when the majority of people are actively excluded by it.
That instability is the central theme of the relationship between oligarchy and democracy. While they are fundamentally opposed in philosophy, the 2 forms of government sometimes existed in this fragile, often temporary balance within the same city-states. The tension was constant.
And the greatest democracy of them all, Athens, is probably the best example of how precarious that balance was. Athens had several temporary oligarchic takeovers, didn't it?
It did, particularly during periods of extreme duress. That's the key. When Athenian democracy wasn't working, usually during military crises, like the devastating defeat in Sicily.
Or severe economic hardship.
Right. The promise of decisive, swift action from the wealthy few suddenly became very appealing to some. The sources show us oligarchy temporarily replaced democracy, most famously with the 400 and later the 30 tyrants.
And these were not benevolent transitions, were they? It wasn't just a political change. It was a total reversal of citizen rights.
Far from it. These oligarchic regimes immediately curtailed the rights of common citizens. They often instituted violence to silence any political opposition. And the crucial point here is that these power shifts, they almost never solved the underlying crisis.
They just made things worse.
They often led directly to significant social conflicts, protests from the less affluent majority who saw their hard-won rights just stripped away.
So what's fascinating here is that the rationale for seizing power, we need to stabilize the state during a crisis, was almost always overshadowed by the actual consequence, which was violently inflaming social tensions.
The populace understood. They saw that a consolidation of power by the wealthy was, first and foremost, a consolidation of wealth for the wealthy. The minute the oligarchs started prioritizing debt collection or prosecuting their rivals over solving the actual military or economic disaster, the social contract just broke down.
And democracy was usually restored.
Yes, but often after severe bloodshed. The deep lesson is that concentrating power, even in a crisis, it rarely serves the public interest.
So stepping back, this study of ancient Greek oligarchy gives us so much more than just a historical footnote. It left behind this undeniable, enduring template for political influence that stretches right up to today.
It absolutely did. The core mechanism that the ancient Greeks perfected, whether it was in commercial Corinth or landed Sparta, is the massive and strategic influence of wealth on politics. And the sources make it clear this isn't just about bribery.
No, it's structural.
It's structural leverage, using financial resources to shape security, to shape public opinion, and ultimately to shape the legal framework of the state. It is a global political constant.
So what does all this mean for us today? I mean, why spend time on these ancient mechanisms?
Because studying the ancient Greek oligarchy provides this critical, clear lens for understanding modern political dynamics. The strategies we've been talking about, financing key operations to gain leverage, building a public profile through massive spending, and controlling legislation to protect your assets. These are all key components of how power and money continue to function globally.
We're observing a timeless political template.
A masterclass in converting economic capital into political capital.
It truly makes you wonder. If the historical record shows that these shifts to the rule of the few consistently happen during moments of intense crisis, military defeat, severe economic hardship, does that suggest that economic uncertainty, or maybe existential national peril, is the most reliable precursor for the consolidation of power among the wealthy elite today?
It's a compelling and maybe uncomfortable thought to keep in mind.
It is a thought to keep mulling over as you analyze the headlines coming out of capital cities all across the world.